Hey guys, tonight we are journeying to the beautiful mist-laden islands of Aotearoa, New Zealand, long before the arrival of Europeans to witness an ancient and deeply sacred art form. We're going to sit quietly beside a skilled Maori weaver as she begins the intricate, patient, and spiritually resonant process of creating a traditional flax cloak, a kakahu. Imagine yourself in a small, fire-lit meeting house, the air fragrant with wood smoke and the earthy scent of prepared flax fibers. You hear the gentle rustle of the weaver's hands, the soft murmur of ancient chants as threads of history, lineage, and artistry begin to intertwine. This isn't just about making a garment to keep warm. It's about weaving identity status and spiritual protection into every single fiber. And honestly, if you were suddenly handed a pile of raw flax leaves and told to produce a weatherproof, intricately patterned, and spiritually imbued cloak using only traditional Maori techniques and your modern-day patience levels, you probably wouldn't survive the first stage of fiber preparation without either giving up in despair or accidentally weaving yourself into a very large, very green, and rather undignified knot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, maybe drop a comment to let us know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always a profound joy to feel our global community of history explorers and gentle dreamers coming together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in a world where nature and spirit are inextricably linked, where every plant, every stone, every rustle of the wind carries meaning. You are in pre-European Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud, among the Maori people whose ancestors arrived centuries before from distant Polynesian homelands, bringing with them a rich cultural heritage and a deep understanding of the natural world. Tonight, our focus is on one of their most revered and practical art forms, the weaving of kakahu or flax cloaks. These were not mere everyday garments, they were treasures tonga imbued with the mana. Spiritual power and prestige of both the weaver and the wearer, often taking months, sometimes even years of patient skilled labor to create. Imagine you are granted the honor of observing a master weaver, perhaps an elder woman of high standing within her Hapu sub-tribe, as she sits before her simple weaving frame. Her hands gnarled with age but still incredibly nimble move with a practiced, almost meditative rhythm. The air around her is filled with a quiet reverence. This isn't just a craft. It's a sacred undertaking accompanied by specific protocols to Kanga and prayers Karakia at every stage, from the gathering of the raw materials to the final finishing touches. Each cloak tells a story of lineage of connection to the land, and of the enduring artistry of the Maori people. These were garments of immense cultural significance worn by chiefs and people of high status, used in important ceremonies, gifted to cement alliances, and passed down through generations as precious heirlooms. The cloaks came in many forms, from the practical weatherproof rain capes pak or pota, to the incredibly fine, soft, and often beautifully adorned kaitaka fine flax cloaks, sometimes with woven taniko borders, or the prestigious kahu huru huru feather cloaks and the rare kahu kuri dog skin cloaks. Each type required immense skill and a deep understanding of the materials, particularly the remarkable New Zealand flax plant harakeke. This plant was the very foundation of Maori weaving, providing not just the fibers for these magnificent cloaks, but also for ropes, fishing nets, baskets, mats, and a host of other everyday and ceremonial items. It was a gift from the gods treated with utmost respect. Historians still argue about the precise timeline for the development of the most elaborate cloak weaving techniques, such as the intricate taniko patterns or the dense featherwork. While the fundamental finger weaving method, watu, is ancient, the peak of complexity and artistry in cloakmaking is often associated with the later pre-European and early contact periods, when these garments reached an incredible level of sophistication. It's a bit like wondering when exactly a good home cook becomes a Michelin-starred chef. The foundational skills are there, but the true artistry evolves over time with dedication and innovation. Tonight, we will gently unravel the threads of this ancient art, following the journey of a Maori flax cloak from the living plant to a finished garment of warmth, beauty, and profound spiritual power. We will explore the meticulous preparation of the fibers, the patient rhythm of the weaving, the intricate patterns, and the deep cultural meanings woven into every strand. It's a story of patient skill and a deep, respectful connection to the natural world, a perfect tale for a quiet, sleepy journey into the past. You're now settled into that quiet, fire-lit space, ready to witness the patient artistry of Maori cloak weaving unfold. Before the first thread can even be twined, before any intricate patterns can emerge, the journey of the kakahu begins with the plant that is its very soul, harakeke, the New Zealand flax, or Phormium tenax as it's known botanically. This remarkable plant with its tall sword-like leaves rising in graceful fans from a central clump was arguably the single most important plant in the traditional Maori world, providing not just the raw material for weaving, but also for medicine for construction, and even for catching birds. It was and still is considered a sacred gift, a taonga treasure from the gods, imbued with its own life force and spiritual significance. Imagine yourself standing before a flourishing grove of harakeke. It might be growing in a swampy area along riverbanks, or perhaps in a specially cultivated plantation near a village, as the Maori understood the importance of managing this vital resource. This isn't just a random patch of weeds. This is a living textile factory, a natural hardware store, and a sacred site all rolled into one. This is a mainstream historical fact. Harakeke Phormium tenax and the less common Phormium kukianum was a plant of immense cultural and practical importance to the Maori, providing the primary fibers for all their woven textiles, including clothing mats, baskets, and fishing nets, as well as being used for ropes, thatching, and traditional medicine. Its cultivation and use were governed by intricate knowledge and protocols. The Maori recognized many different varieties of harakeke, each with its own specific properties, textures, and suitability for different purposes. Some varieties produced long, strong, slightly coarser fibers, ideal for making durable ropes, fishing lines, or robust floor mats. Others yielded incredibly fine, soft, silky fibers, known as muka, which were prized for weaving the most beautiful and high-status cloaks, the kaitaka, or the base for feathered cloaks. Weavers, usually. Women would have an encyclopedic knowledge of these different cultivars, knowing which ones grew in their region, which ones were best for a particular type of garment, and even which specific plants within a grove produced the highest quality fibers. It was a level of botanical expertise passed down through generations, a deep intuitive understanding of their natural resources. You wouldn't just grab any old leaf. You'd select your harakeke with the discernment of a master tailor choosing the finest silk. This particular Ngaro variety. A weaver might muse its muka will be as soft as a newborn bird's down, perfect for the chiefly cloak I envision. The harakeke plant itself was seen as representing a family group, or wanao. The central unopened shoot, the rito, was considered the baby of the plant, and it was never cut, as this would destroy the parent plant. The two leaves on either side of the rito, the awi rito, or parent leaves, were also usually left untouched, as they protected and nurtured the central shoot. Only the outer, more mature leaves, raumatua, were harvested, and then only with care and respect, ensuring the continued health and regeneration of the harakeke clump. This sustainable harvesting practice was not just practical, it was a reflection of a worldview that saw humans as part of, not dominant over the natural world, bound by kinship and reciprocal obligations. There's a quirky little tidbit that even the way the flax leaves were cut carried significance. Traditionally, a sharp mussel shell kuku or a carefully shaped piece of obsidian or paunamu greenstone was used, and the cut was often made on a diagonal upwards and away from the heart of the plant to allow rainwater to run off and prevent rot from setting in. It was a small detail, but it speaks to the meticulous care and deep respect accorded to this vital plant. It wasn't just about taking, it was about ensuring the plant would continue to give. If you upset the harakeke spirits with sloppy harvesting, your next batch of fibers might be disappointingly naughty, or so the belief might go. The spiritual significance of harakeke was profound. It was associated with Hinateiwaiwa, the goddess of weaving childbirth and the cycles of the moon. Prayers karakia would be offered to her and to the spirit of the harakeke itself before harvesting began, asking for permission to take the leaves and for blessings on the weaving process. These rituals acknowledged the sacredness of the plant and the weaver's role as a conduit for transforming this natural gift into an object of cultural and spiritual value. Historians still argue about the precise antiquity of the most complex harakeke processing and weaving techniques found in Aotearoa. while flax-like plants were used in other parts of Polynesia. The unique qualities of New Zealand harakeke and the sophisticated methods developed by the Maori to process its fibers into fine muka and to weave it into intricate garments represent a distinct and highly developed technological and artistic tradition. Did these techniques arrive fully formed with the first Polynesian settlers? Or did they evolve over centuries within Aotearoa in response to the local environment and the specific properties of the Phormium species? It's a fascinating question about cultural adaptation and innovation. So as you stand before that vibrant green fan of harakeke leaves, remember that you are looking at more than just a plant. You are looking at a source of life, a symbol of family, a sacred gift, and the very first essential ingredient in the intricate patient art of weaving a Maori flax cloak. Its strong, silken fibers hold the promise of warmth, beauty, and ancestral connection. You're now standing with quiet reverence before a flourishing clump of harakeke, the sacred New Zealand flax, understanding its profound significance as the lifeblood of Maori weaving. You've seen how it represents family, how different varieties possess unique qualities, and how it's regarded not just as a plant, but as a divine gift. Given this deep spiritual connection, it follows that the act of harvesting the harakeke leaves was never a casual or indiscriminate affair. It was a process steeped in Tikanga customary protocols and etiquette, and accompanied by karakia prayers or incantations, ensuring that the flax was gathered with respect, gratitude, and a mindful awareness of its sacred nature and its role in the wider ecosystem. This was the essential first step in the intricate patient art, a moment of communion between the weaver, the plant, and the spiritual world. Imagine the weaver, perhaps an elder woman, highly skilled in her craft, approaching the PA harakeke flax plantation or grove as dawn begins to break, or perhaps in the quiet hush of the late afternoon. The air is cool, the light soft. She doesn't just rush in and start hacking away at the leaves. No, there's a prescribed order, a set of traditional rules that must be observed. This is a mainstream historical fact. The harvesting of harakeke by Maori weavers was governed by strict traditional protocols. Tikanga, which included offering prayers, karakia selectively cutting only the outer mature leaves, while leaving the central shoot rito and its two protective parent leaves. Awai rito untouched to ensure the plant's continued regeneration, and often using specific traditional cutting tools. These practices reflected a deep respect for the plant as a living entity and a vital resource. Before a single leaf is cut, a karakia would be offered. You can picture the weaver, her head perhaps bowed, her voice a soft murmur in the quiet air, addressing the spirits of the flax, the ancestors, and Hainatei Waiwa, the patron goddess of weaving and childbirth. The prayer might ask for permission to take the leaves, give thanks for the plant's bounty, seek blessings for the weaving process that is to come, and perhaps ask that the finished cloak bring warmth, beauty, and mana to its eventual wearer. It's a moment of centering, of acknowledging the sacred transaction that is about to take place. It's not just taking, it's receiving a gift, and gifts require gratitude. You wouldn't just barge into your divine great-aunt's garden and start yanking out her prize-winning petunias without at least a polite, "May I, Bahai," and a promise to use them for something noble like a really excellent hat. The selection of leaves is also crucial and done with care. As we've learned, only the outer mature leaves, the raumatua, are taken. The central shoot, the rito, the child, and its immediate protectors, the awi rito or matua, the parents are left undisturbed. This ensures the ongoing life and vitality of the harakeke plant, allowing it to continue producing new leaves for future harvests. It's a perfect model of sustainable resource management, born not from modern environmental science textbooks, but from generations of intimate observation and a worldview that saw humans in a reciprocal relationship with nature. Cutting the rito was, and still is, considered a deeply disrespectful act, akin to harming the heart of the family, and was believed to bring bad luck or even destroy the entire plant. The tool used for cutting the leaves was traditionally not a metal knife, at least not in the earliest periods. A sharp mussel shell kuku, carefully flaked obsidian tuhua, or a piece of polished Ponamu greenstone or New Zealand jade would be used. The cut itself was often made with a specific technique, typically on a diagonal from the base of the leaf upwards and away from the center of the plant. This allowed rainwater to run off easily, preventing the cut edge from rotting and potentially harming the parent clump. Every action was considered, every detail had a purpose. There's a quirky little tidbit that certain times were considered more auspicious for harvesting harakeke than others. For instance, it was often preferred to harvest when the moon was waxing, or full, as this was believed to result in stronger, more lustrous fibers. Harvesting during a waning moon or during certain restricted periods like when a woman was menstruating, as this was considered a state of tapu or sacred restriction that might conflict with the tapu of the flax, might be avoided. Some traditions also dictated that one should not speak loudly or behave frivolously while gathering flax, maintaining an atmosphere of quiet respect. It's like the flax had very sensitive ears and preferred a calm spa-like atmosphere for its biannual haircut. Once the selected leaves were carefully cut, they would be bundled together and carried back to the village or the weaver's home. Even this act of transport might be done with a certain reverence. The leaves were not just raw material. They were already on their journey to becoming something sacred, something imbued with cultural meaning and ancestral connection. Historians still argue about the regional variations in these harvesting tikanga and karakia. Different iwi tribes and hapu sub-tribes likely had their own specific protocols and prayers passed down through their particular ancestral lines. What might be permissible in one area could be tapu in another. This rich diversity of local tradition underscores the deep and intimate relationship each community had with its specific pa harakeke. So the respectful harvest, guided by ancient prayers and protocols, is complete. The carefully selected leaves of the sacred harakeke now lie ready, their silken fibers, waiting to be released and transformed by the weaver's patient hands. This initial act of communion with the plant sets the spiritual tone for the entire intricate art of creating a Maori Flax Cloak. You've just witnessed the profound respect and ancient ritual that accompanies the harvesting of harakeke, the sacred New Zealand flax. The weaver, having offered her karakia and carefully selected only the mature outer leaves, now returns to her village or workshop with bundles of this precious raw material. The journey from a stiff, sword-like flax leaf to the soft, lustrous, and incredibly strong fibers known as muka, the very threads that will form the heart of a beautiful cloak, is a testament to Maori ingenuity, patience, and an intimate understanding of the plant's properties. This is where the true alchemy begins, the gentle but persistent transformation of plant into textile, a process that is both laborious and deeply satisfying. Imagine the weaver seated perhaps on a woven mat in a sheltered spot, a pile of freshly cut harakeke leaves beside her. The first step in extracting the muka is often to remove the hard midrib and the sharp edges from each leaf, usually with a sharp shell or a flake of obsidian. This leaves the two halves of the flax blade, which are still quite stiff and green. Now comes the crucial stage of haro, or scraping, to release the fibers from the green outer layer and the gummy water-filled pith. This is a mainstream historical fact. The preparation of muka-dressed flax fiber from harakeke leaves by the Maori involved a meticulous process of scraping away the green epidermis and internal pith, traditionally using a sharp mussel shell cuckoo or a piece of obsidian to expose and release the strong, silky inner fibers. This process required considerable skill and patience. You watch as the weaver takes a half leaf, perhaps laying it over a smooth, rounded piece of wood or stone held on her lap or on the ground. She then takes her mussel shell, its edge sharpened to a keen blade, and with firm, even pressure draws it down the length of the flax strip. With each pass, the green outer layer and the fleshy, almost jelly-like inner material are scraped away, revealing the pale, almost white longitudinal fibers of the muka within. It's a rhythmic, repetitive action requiring just the right amount of pressure. Too little and the green matter isn't removed properly. Too much and the delicate fibers can be damaged or broken. The sound is a soft, wet scraping noise punctuated by the occasional sigh of effort from the weaver. It's like trying to get every last bit of goodness out of a very stubborn green bean, but on a much larger and more artistically significant scale. This scraping process is incredibly labor-intensive. Many, many leaves must be processed in this way to yield enough muka for even a small cloak. It takes time, patience, and a strong wrist. As the green gunk, for want of a more technical term though, parankima, is the botanical one is scraped away, the beautiful silken muka fibers are revealed, still held together in a ribbon-like strip. These strips of freshly scraped muka are then often bundled together and might be washed in running water to remove any remaining pith or green residue. After scraping and washing, the muka fibers need to be further softened and separated. This is often achieved through a process of patu or beating. The bundles of muka might be struck repeatedly with a smooth stone pestle patu muka against a flat stone anvil. This helps to break down any remaining stiffness, separate the individual fibers, and make them more pliable and lustrous. The sound of the patu muka would be another rhythmic percussive element in the soundscape of a Maori village, a steady beat signifying the patient transformation of flax. It's like a very gentle, very focused textile tenderizing process. Don't worry, little fibers. The weaver might be humming, "This is just to make you beautifully soft and ready for your cloak destiny." In some traditions, after scraping or beating, the muka might be miro or rolled by hand against the leg. A twisting and rolling motion that further separates and aligns the fibers, making them even finer and stronger, ready for twining or weaving. Or it might be kani, a process of rubbing the fibers together. Different varieties of flax and different desired outcomes for the final textile would dictate the precise sequence and intensity of these preparation stages. There's a quirky little tidbit that the gummy, slightly sticky residue scraped from the flax leaves, the kooriar, wasn't always just discarded. It had its own uses. It could be used as a mild antiseptic or a soothing application for burns or wounds, or even as a kind of natural starch or sizing agent for other purposes. The Maori were masters of using every part of their key resources, a truly zero-waste philosophy in action. So even the scraps from making a beautiful cloak had their own humble, helpful destiny. Historians still argue about the exact historical development and regional variations of these intricate fiber preparation techniques. Were the methods for producing the very finest, silkiest muka for high-status kaitaka cloaks a later refinement, or an ancient skill known from the earliest periods of Maori settlement in Aotearoa? And how much did the available tools, the quality of mussel shells, the types of stone available for beaters, influence the final quality of the fiber? These are subtle but important questions in understanding the evolution of this remarkable textile art. But as you watch the weaver, her hands moving with an ageless rhythm, transforming those stiff green leaves into hanks of soft, shimmering, incredibly strong muka, you are witnessing a kind of quiet magic. It's a birth in a way. The birth of the threads that will soon be woven into a garment of beauty mana and ancestral connection. The gentle strength of the muka is a direct result of this patient, meticulous, and deeply respectful preparation. You've now witnessed the birth of muka, those strong, silken fibers patiently coaxed from the stiff green leaves of the sacred harakeke flax. These pale, lustrous threads are the very foundation of the Maori cloak, but often a cloak was not destined to remain purely in these natural, creamy hues. The ancient Maori weavers were also master dyers, possessing a profound knowledge of the natural world around them. Understanding how to extract a palette of rich, earthy, and enduring colors from the barks, roots, berries, and even the very mud of Aotearoa. The dyeing of the muka was another slow, meticulous, and often spiritually significant stage in the creation of a kakahu, transforming the plain fibers into threads that would carry symbolic meaning and visual power. Imagine the weaver having prepared a sufficient quantity of muka, now turning her attention to gathering the materials for her dye baths. This wasn't a trip to the local art supply store for a tube of pre-mixed pigment. Oh no, this was an intimate engagement with the landscape. She would know which trees yielded the richest tannins for creating deep blacks or warm reddish browns, which berries offered a fleeting purple or blue, though these were often less permanent, which roots or lichens could produce yellows and oranges. Traditional Maori dyeing techniques for muka involved this deep knowledge of local botany, utilizing specific parts of plants and sometimes even mineral-rich muds to achieve a range of beautiful permanent colors. The most prized and commonly used color in Maori weaving, particularly for the intricate geometric patterns of tanako borders, was a deep, lustrous black or pango. Achieving this was a complex, multi-step process that often took considerable time and specific conditions. Typically, the muka fibers would first be steeped for a period in an infusion made from the bark of certain trees such as hainau or tanekaha, which are rich in tannins. This tannin bath acted as a sort of primer, preparing the fibers to react with the next crucial ingredient. After this initial steeping, the tannin-soaked muka would then be immersed in a special type of iron-rich black mud, or paru sourced from particular swamps or riverbeds. This wasn't just any old mud, it had to have the right mineral composition. The iron in the mud would react chemically with the tannins in the fiber, creating a deep, permanent black. It was a true alchemical transformation, turning pale flax into threads as dark as the night sky. Your workshop might smell less like a perfumed boudoir and more like an enthusiastic, slightly ferrous swamp bog during this particular dyeing process, but the stunning, enduring results were well worth the olfactory adventure. Other colors were achieved with similar patience and botanical knowledge. Rich reddish browns or kura could be obtained from the bark of the totara tree or sometimes from other barks like manuka. These often required a mordant, a substance that helps to fix the dye to the fiber and improve its color fastness. The iron-rich paru could also act as a mordant for these reddish dyes, or specific barks or even certain types of mineral-infused water might be used. Yellows and oranges, or kauhai. The same word as for the kauhai tree itself were often derived from the flowers or bark of the kauhai tree, or from other plants like Coprisma species. Creating vibrant, lasting colors from natural sources was a highly skilled art requiring not just knowledge of the plants, but also an understanding of timing, water quality, and the subtle chemistry of the dye bath. Waiting for your hanks of muka to achieve the perfect shade of sacred mud black or deep forest brown was definitely not a process for the impatient weaver. There was no same-day color service available in ancient Aotearoa. There's a quirky little tidbit that some traditions hold that the very best iron-rich mud for achieving that deep, sought-after black dye was found in specific, almost sacred swamps or pools that had been used for this purpose by weavers for generations. These places might have their own Tikanga protocols for approaching and using them. And it was believed that disturbing these mud holes unnecessarily or without showing proper respect could anger local Kaidiaki guardian spirits or result in a disappointingly weak or uneven dye batch. It's like having a secret, slightly temperamental organic inkwell provided by nature, one that only reveals its best, deepest black under the right spiritual conditions. And with a polite, "Excuse me, may I borrow some of your excellent pigment?" The full range of mordants or fixatives used by ancient Maori weavers to achieve color fastness and specific shades with their natural dyes, beyond the well-documented use of iron-rich muds for black or certain tannin-rich barks, is still a subject of ongoing research and experimentation by textile historians and traditional weaving revivalists who work to rediscover and understand these ancient chemical secrets. Once the muka fibers had been dyed to the desired hue, a process that could involve multiple immersions and careful drying in between, they would be rinsed and perhaps gently softened again. Now the weaver had her palette, the natural creamy white of undyed muka, the deep resonant black, the warm reddish browns, the sunny yellows. Each color carried its own symbolic weight. Black was often associated with the earth, the female principle the night, and sometimes with mana and chiefly authority. Red, a sacred color in many Polynesian cultures, often signified life force, prestige, and divinity. White could represent purity, light, and the spirit world. These colors, carefully chosen and artfully combined, would not just beautify the cloak, but also imbue it with layers of meaning and spiritual power. The dyeing process was more than just coloring threads. It was about preparing the very language with which the cloak would tell its story. You're now surrounded by hanks of beautifully prepared muka fibers, some in their natural creamy white, others imbued with the rich earthy hues of traditional Maori dyes. Deep blacks from iron-rich mud, warm reddish browns from totara bark, perhaps even sunny yellows from kauhai. These lustrous silken threads born from the humble harakeke flax through such patient effort are now ready to be transformed into a cloak of warmth, beauty, and profound cultural significance. And the method by which this transformation occurs is a testament to Maori ingenuity and artistry, a unique ancient finger-weaving technique known as watu, a kind of finger-dancing magic that requires no loom, no shuttle, just the incredible skill and dexterity of the weaver's hands. Imagine the weaver perhaps seated on a woven mat, her posture upright yet relaxed, her focus intense but calm. Before her, the prepared muka threads are ready. Unlike many weaving traditions around the world that employ complex looms with heddles and shuttles to interlace warp and weft, the Maori technique for cloak-making watu, pronounced roughly fatu, relies entirely on the direct manipulation of threads by the weaver's fingers. This is a mainstream historical fact. The primary Maori technique for cloak weaving is wa, a distinct form of downward finger weaving or twining, where the passive vertical threads, the warp or wenu, are held taut, often suspended from a simple frame or between two upright pegs. And the active horizontal threads, the weft or aho, are manipulated by hand to create the fabric structure, typically working from top to bottom. The process usually begins with establishing the top edge of the cloak, often a strong plated border called the kaupapa. From this starting edge, the vertical warp threads, the wenu, will hang downwards, forming the foundation of the cloak. These wenu threads are the passive element. They are held in place, waiting to be embraced by the active weft threads. Now the weaver takes her weft threads, the aho. Typically for finer cloaks, she will work with 2 pairs of aho threads simultaneously. This technique, known as huatu aho rua, or double pair twining, creates a dense, closely woven and beautifully textured fabric. For simpler or more utilitarian garments like rain capes, a single pair of weft threads, watu aho patahi, might be used, resulting in a more open-spaced weave, with incredible precision and a rhythm developed over years, often a lifetime of practice. The weaver begins to twine the pairs of aho threads around each successive wenu thread. Her fingers dance deftly, crossing and twisting the weft threads, enclosing each warp thread in a secure embrace, locking it into place. Row by painstaking row, the fabric begins to grow downwards from that starting edge, a solid yet flexible textile emerging, as if by magic, from the interplay of her skilled hands and the lustrous muka fibers. It's a very direct, very tactile process, an intimate conversation between the weaver and her materials. There are no complicated machines to break down or get in the way, just her own incredibly skilled fingers, and perhaps the need for a really good traditional hand balm afterwards, because working with muka, for all its beauty, can be quite tough on the skin over many hours. The weaver works with intense concentration, yet there is often a serene, almost meditative quality to her movements. The repetitive rhythmic action of twining the threads can be hypnotic, both for the weaver and for anyone fortunate enough to observe. It was said that a truly skilled weaver could work so rhythmically and smoothly that the only sound you'd hear in the quiet of the Ware-Poro weaving house was the gentle whisper of the muka fibers sighing into place, like the cloak was literally breathing itself into existence. Very ASMR, but with considerably more cultural significance and definitely less tapping on microphones. This finger weaving technique allows for incredible control and versatility. The weaver can vary the tension of the threads, the spacing of the rows, and the thickness of the muka to create different textures and effects within the same garment. She can introduce new threads of different colors to create intricate patterns, particularly in the decorative taniko borders, which we'll explore soon. It's a method that, while demanding immense patience and skill, offers a remarkable degree of artistic freedom. You certainly wouldn't want to be binge-watching your favorite historical dramas like this one while engaged in such intricate work. One wrong twist, one moment of inattention, and your chiefly cloak could quickly unravel into something resembling a bewildered and rather expensive fishing net. The precise origins and evolutionary path of the unique Maori watu finger weaving technique, particularly its development into the sophisticated double pair twining used for fine cloaks like the kaitaka, and its relationship to other Polynesian plaiting and twining traditions found across the Pacific, continue to be explored and debated by ethnographers, archaeologists, and textile experts. It is a distinctly Aotearoan innovation, perfectly adapted to the unique properties of the harakeke fiber. Some traditional weavers also believe that their fingers know the patterns and the rhythm of the weave, almost independently of their conscious mind, especially when working on a familiar pattern or after many years of dedicated practice. It's as if the ancestral knowledge, the muscle memory of generations of weavers, flows directly through their hands into the forming fabric. This deep intuitive connection to the craft is part of what makes these cloaks so much more than just garments. They are repositories of skill, tradition, and spirit brought into being by the almost magical dance of the weaver's fingers. You are now intimately familiar with the almost magical finger dancing of the watu weave, the ancient Maori technique that transforms hanks of prepared muka fiber into enduring, beautiful textiles without the aid of any complex loom. You've seen how the weaver's hands directly manipulate the weft threads around the passive warp. But before this intricate twining can even begin, before the first row of the cloak starts to take shape, those all-important vertical warp threads, the wenu, must be carefully prepared and suspended, held taut, and orderly, ready to receive the embrace of the weft. This crucial setup, though simple in its tools, requires precision and foresight, laying the very foundation for the masterpiece to come. Unlike loom weaving, where warp threads are stretched across a substantial frame, often with beams and heddles, the traditional Maori method for cloak making employed a wonderfully minimalist yet highly effective system. Maori weavers traditionally use a simple arrangement consisting of two upright stakes, or pegs known as turu-turu, to suspend the warp threads for the watu technique. These turu-turu would be firmly driven into the ground, either outdoors in a sheltered spot or within the werepora. The dedicated weaving house. Sometimes for smaller pieces or for portability, the pegs might be set into a movable wooden base. The setup was beautifully straightforward. Your loom, in essence, could be two sturdy sticks and a bit of string, or a plaited band. Try getting that through a modern health and safety inspection for textile machinery. Permit denied insufficient cogs and warning labels. The distance between these two turu-turu pegs would determine the initial width of the cloak being woven. For a wide, prestigious cloak, the pegs would be set further apart. For a smaller cape or child's garment, closer together. Once the pegs were securely in place, the weaver would typically attach a strong cord, or more often a carefully plaited starting border called the kaupapa, horizontally between the tops of the two pegs. This kaupapa would form the top edge of the cloak, often its neckband, and it was from this that all the wenu threads would hang. Now the weaver takes her prepared bundles of muka fibers, those lustrous silken threads she so patiently extracted and perhaps dyed. These will become the wenu, the vertical foundation of her garment. One by one, or in small, carefully counted groups, she attaches these warp threads to the kaupapa, or the supporting cord. They might be looped over it or intricately plaited into it depending on the desired finish for the cloak's top edge. The length of these hanging wenu threads, of course, dictates the potential length of the finished cloak. She must calculate this carefully, allowing for any take-up during the weaving process and the desired final dimensions. Getting all those hundreds, sometimes thousands of vertical threads perfectly, even correctly spaced and hanging without tangles before you even begin the first row of weaving. That's a level of patience and precision that makes entangling a severely neglected set of Christmas lights look like a pleasant walk in the park. The spacing of these wenu threads along the kaupapa is also critical. For a fine, dense fabric like that of a high-status kaitaka cloak, the warp threads would be set very close together. For a more open utilitarian weave, perhaps for a rain cape, they might be spaced further apart. The weaver's experienced eye and skilled hands would ensure this spacing was consistent across the entire width. Once all the wenu threads are suspended, hanging vertically like a pale, shimmering waterfall, between the two turu-turu pegs, the weaver is almost ready to begin her wat-au twining. She would typically sit on a woven mat on the ground directly in front of this curtain of threads, the work progressing downwards from the top edge row by horizontal row. This downward orientation of weaving is a characteristic feature of the Maori technique. Maintaining an even tension across all these warp threads throughout the lengthy weaving process was paramount. If the tension was uneven, the finished cloak would pucker, distort, or hang incorrectly. The exact methods for maintaining perfectly consistent tension across a wide warp for very large and fine cloaks using only this traditional two-peg turu-turu arrangement, without the aid of more complex loom mechanics like tensioning beams or suspended weights, which were not typically part of this cloak weaving tradition, are still subjects of practical exploration and admiring discussion among contemporary weavers and textile ethnographers. It speaks to the incredible skill and sensitivity in the weaver's hands, her ability to feel and adjust the tension as she worked. There's a charming, quirky little tidbit that some weavers might have had a favorite pair of turu-turu pegs, perhaps carved by a loved one from a specific type of sacred wood, or inherited from a revered weaving ancestor. These pegs wouldn't just be tools. They would be imbued with Wairua spirit and history's silent partners in the creative process. Before beginning to attach the warp threads, a weaver might quietly introduce the prepared muka to her turu-turu, perhaps with a soft karakia or a gentle touch, almost like she was asking them to be good cooperative colleagues in the long and patient task ahead. No one wants grumpy, uncooperative weaving pegs causing uneven tension in a lopsided cloak after all. With the wenu threads now perfectly stretched, a shimmering curtain of potential between the two steadfast turu-turu, the stage is set. The weaver takes her first pair of aho weft threads, her fingers poised. The real magic, the rhythmic dance of interlacing time and thread is about to begin. You are now seated quietly before the weaver, the vertical warp threads, the wenu, hanging like a shimmering curtain of pale muka between the two sturdy turuturu pegs. The air in the wearpore of the weaving house is still filled with a sense of focused anticipation. The dyed fibers, if any are to be used for patterns, are neatly arranged nearby. The weaver has offered her karakia, her mind centered, her spirit aligned with the task ahead. Now with a grace born of long practice, she takes her first prepared weft threads, the aho, and the intricate patient dance of interlacing time and fiber truly begins. The cloak starts to take form row by meticulous finger-twined row. Watch her hands. They move with a fluid, almost mesmerizing dexterity. For a fine cloak, she is likely using the watu aho rua technique, or double pair twining. This means she is manipulating 4 individual weft threads simultaneously, 2 forming one pair and 2 forming another. She takes the first pair of aho threads and working from one side of the warp, often from left to right. Though this could vary by weaver or tradition, she passes them behind the first hanging wenu warp thread. Then she brings them forward, one aho thread passing over the wenu, the other under it, and gives them a half twist before enclosing the next wenu thread. Then she does the same with the second pair of aho threads, perhaps in the alternate twist, creating an interlocking, incredibly strong yet flexible fabric. This is a mainstream historical fact. The creation of a prestigious Maori cloak, kakahu, was a highly labor-intensive and time-consuming undertaking, often requiring hundreds, if not thousands of hours of meticulous finger weaving by a skilled woman with complex cloaks adorned with feathers or intricate taniko borders, sometimes taking well over a year or even several years to complete if worked on intermittently. The process is one of extreme precision. Each twist must be even, each warp thread encased with the same tension, each row packed down neatly against the one above it, often using a small smooth stone or a piece of polished bone as a beater or caro. The fabric grows downwards from the plaited top edge, a new line of closely twined weft appearing with each pass of the weaver's hands. It's an incredibly slow process by modern standards. This isn't next day delivery on your chiefly regalia. It's more like next year delivery if the flax spirits are particularly willing and my fingers haven't decided to file for early retirement. The sounds are subtle, almost hypnotic. The soft rustle and whisper of the muka fibers as they interlace, the gentle click of the weaver's fingernails against the threads. Perhaps her soft humming of a wayata watu, a traditional weaving song or chant. These songs were not just for entertainment, they often carried ancestral stories, weaving knowledge or prayers, helping to maintain the rhythm of the work and imbue the forming cloak with spiritual power and historical connection. You wouldn't want to be trying to catch up on the latest village gossip or plan your grocery list while engaged in this. One drop stitch in the mana department, one lapse in concentration, could potentially unravel the whole spiritual vibe of the garment, or at least result in a rather noticeable flaw. As the rows accumulate, the sheer artistry and endurance involved become apparent. To create a fabric dense enough to offer warmth and protection, yet supple enough to drape gracefully using only one's fingers, to manipulate the threads is a feat of immense skill. The weaver's hands know the feel of the muka, the right amount of twist, the perfect tension. Some traditional weavers believe that their fingers know the patterns and the rhythm of the weave, almost independently of their conscious mind, especially when working on a familiar pattern or after many years of dedicated practice. It's as if the ancestral knowledge, the accumulated wisdom of generations of master weavers, flows directly through their hands into the forming fabric, each movement an echo of those who came before. The precise average speed at which an experienced pre-European Maori weaver could produce high-quality, double-pair twined watu fabric, perhaps measured in square centimeters per hour, and how this compared in terms of sheer labor input to loom-based weaving in other cultures is difficult to definitively quantify, but is a fascinating area for experimental archaeology and comparative textile studies. What is certain is that it was not a craft for the impatient or the easily distracted. It required a profound commitment of time, energy, and spirit. It was sometimes believed that if a weaver made a mistake in a complex pattern and didn't unpick it immediately and correct it, or if she spoke ill of her work, or the material she was using, the Wairua spirit of the cloak might be compromised, or it might bring bad luck to the weaver or the eventual wearer. So no complaining about how incredibly long this particular row is taking. Even if your fingers are cramping and your back is aching, the cloak can hear you, and it might just decide to develop a mysterious, unfixable sag in that exact spot out of pure spite. Hour after hour, day after day, the weaver sits before her turuturu, pegs her hands in constant, graceful motion, the cloak growing almost imperceptibly downwards. The sun might move across the sky, casting shifting patterns of light into the Wairpora. The seasons might even begin to turn, and still the patient interlacing of warp and weft continues. Each row completed is a small victory. Another line in a story being woven into existence, a testament to the enduring power of human skill and the profound beauty of an art form that truly embodies the gentle strength of both the fiber and its creator. You are now deeply immersed in the rhythmic, patient world of the Maori weaver. Her skilled fingers dancing across the warp threads, transforming hanks of prepared muka into the growing fabric of a cloak. Row upon row of meticulous watu twining slowly descends from the starting edge, a testament to incredible dedication and artistry. But many of the most prestigious Maori cloaks, particularly the fine kaitaka, were not just plain expanses of beautifully woven flax. They were often adorned with intricate, colorful, and deeply symbolic geometric patterns, especially along their borders or as decorative panels. This was the art of tanako, a distinct and highly sophisticated form of finger weaving that added another layer of beauty, meaning, and mana to these treasured garments. Imagine the weaver having perhaps completed the main body of a fine cloak in the natural creamy white of undyed muka, now preparing to add a stunning tanako border. This wasn't embroidery added afterwards. Tanako was an integral part of the weaving process itself, created by introducing dyed muka threads of different colors, typically black, red, brown, and the natural white, into the weft as she worked. This is a mainstream historical fact. Taniko is a traditional Maori finger weaving technique used to create intricate geometric patterns, often in black, red, and white, typically found as ornamental borders on high-status flax cloaks, kaitaka, and other garments. The technique involves manipulating colored weft threads around a flax fiber core to produce these precise repeating designs. The patterns of Taniko are not random decorative squiggles. They are a rich visual language composed of specific motifs and combinations that carry symbolic meanings. Common elements include triangles Niho Taniwa, teeth of the sea monster or dragon often representing ancestors or protection chevrons Aranui, pathways often symbolizing endeavor or striving diamond shapes, Patiki, flounderfish representing hospitality and abundance in stepped patterns Putama, stairway to heaven symbolizing genealogies, learning, and spiritual ascent. Each combination of these elements could tell a story, denote a particular lineage, or imbue the cloak with specific protective or empowering qualities. It was like weaving a coded message of visual Wakapapa genealogy into the very fabric of the garment. You wouldn't just pick a pattern because it looked nice. You'd choose one that resonated with the intended wearer, their ancestry, or the purpose of the cloak. It was less, does this pattern go with my shoes? And more, does this pattern accurately reflect my chiefly lineage and my connection to the gods of the earth and sky? The technique for creating tanako is incredibly intricate. The weaver must meticulously count and manipulate the colored weft threads, ensuring each one appears on the surface of the fabric at precisely the right moment to form the pattern. The threads not currently in use on the surface are carried along the back of the work, or sometimes cleverly incorporated into the structure. It requires immense concentration, a keen eye for detail, and an almost mathematical understanding of how the geometric shapes will emerge from the interplay of the colored threads. The resulting fabric is often quite stiff and dense compared to the main body of the cloak, giving the tanako borders a distinctive, substantial feel. It's like creating a tiny, incredibly detailed wearable mosaic, but with threads instead of tiles and with significantly more spiritual weight than your average bathroom floor. The colors themselves, as we've discussed, were derived from natural dyes. The deep lustrous black from iron-rich mud and tannin-rich barks, the warm reddish browns from totara or other tree barks, and the natural creamy white of the undyed muka. The contrast between these earthy yet vibrant hues gave the taniko patterns their striking visual impact. Imagine a rich black and white triangular pattern perhaps with a flash of red running along the bottom edge of a beautifully woven cloak. It would be a powerful statement of artistry and cultural identity. Odd. There's a quirky little tidbit that suggests some Tanako patterns might have been considered to have protective qualities, almost like woven amulets. Certain designs might be believed to ward off ill fortune or malicious spirits, their geometric precision and symbolic power creating a kind of spiritual shield for the wearer. So that intricate border wasn't just looking sharp, it was also quite possibly working a bit of subtle defensive magic on your behalf. Don't mind me just wearing my anti-evil spirit triangular force field. Very fashionable this season, and surprisingly effective against minor curses. Historians still argue about the precise origins and development of the Tanako technique. Was it an art form that evolved slowly over centuries within Aotearoa? Or did it perhaps have earlier Polynesian antecedents that were adapted and refined by Maori weavers? The level of geometric precision and symbolic complexity found in classic Tanako is truly remarkable, and suggests a long period of development and mastery. The patterns themselves often have regional variations with different Aiwi tribes, favoring particular motifs or color combinations, further enriching the tapestry of this unique art form. The creation of a Tanako border was often the most time-consuming and highly skilled part of weaving a kaitaka cloak. It required not just manual dexterity, but also a deep understanding of the patterns, their meanings, and the complex interplay of color and form. It was a true labor of love and a mark of a master weaver. As you watch those intricate, colorful geometric shapes emerge, thread by patient thread under the weaver's skilled fingers, you are witnessing the creation of more than just a decorative edge. You are seeing a vibrant expression of Maori identity, ancestral connection, and profound artistic and spiritual power woven into the very fabric of time. You've just marveled at the intricate, colorful, and deeply symbolic geometric patterns of Tanako, borders a testament to the mathematical precision and artistic vision of the Maori weaver. These woven geometries added a profound layer of meaning and prestige to the fine flax cloaks. But the artistry of Maori cloak making didn't stop there. For some of the most highly prized and visually stunning cloaks, the kakahu, another element from the natural world of Aotearoa, was incorporated with breathtaking skill, the feathers of native birds. These were the kahu huruhuru, or feather cloaks, garments of incredible beauty, warmth, and immense spiritual and chiefly significance. Imagine the weaver having perhaps completed the main body of a cloak, using the finest muka flax fiber and maybe even adorned its edges with intricate taniko, now preparing to add the final dazzling flourish. She would have a carefully collected and prepared store of feathers from various native New Zealand birds. This is a mainstream historical fact. Maori weavers created highly prestigious feather cloaks known as kahu huruhuru by meticulously attaching the feathers of native birds such as the kaka, a native parrot, Kareru wood pigeon, tui, and kiwi, to the woven flax fiber base of a cloak, often in intricate patterns or blocks of color. These cloaks were symbols of high-status wealth and mana. The types of feathers used were varied, each bringing its own unique color texture and iridescence. The vibrant red feathers from the underwing of the kaka parrot were particularly prized, creating cloaks of fiery splendor. The shimmering iridescent blue-black feathers of the tui. The soft brown hair-like feathers of the kiwi, often from birds found deceased, given their nocturnal and elusive nature, and the rich bronze or green feathers of the Kareru New Zealand wood pigeon, were all incorporated with stunning effect. Sometimes feathers from a single type of bird were used to create a cloak of uniform color and texture. Other times, feathers of different colors and types were skillfully combined to create bold geometric patterns, stripes, or checkered designs, much like the woven taniko, but realized in a three-dimensional, softly rustling medium. It was like painting with feathers, creating a wearable mosaic of avian beauty. You weren't just wearing a cloak, you were wearing the distilled essence of the forest, a shimmering mantle of Aotearoa's unique bird life. The process of attaching the feathers was incredibly meticulous and time-consuming. Each feather or small bunch of feathers had to be individually and securely tied into the woven fabric of the cloak as it was being made, or sometimes carefully inserted into the existing weave of a completed flax cloak base. The weaver would use fine muka threads to lash the quill of the feather to the cloak's structure, ensuring it was anchored firmly and lay in the correct direction to create the desired pattern and a smooth, overlapping surface much like the natural plumage of a bird. Imagine the patience required handling thousands of delicate feathers, each one placed with precision, to create a garment that might take many months or even years to complete. It's the kind of detailed, repetitive work that would make modern craft enthusiasts either weep with envy at the dedication or run screaming for a glue gun, which of course was not an option. Only 842 more tiny red kaka feathers to attach to this section. The weaver might sigh contentedly, nearly halfway there. The effect of a completed kahu huru huru must have been breathtaking. As the wearer moved, the feathers would rustle softly, catching the light, their colors shifting and shimmering. It would have been a garment that was not just visually stunning, but also alive with movement and sound, a truly dynamic piece of wearable art. These cloaks were not for everyday wear, of course. They were reserved for people of high rank, chiefs, rangatira, esteemed warriors, or respected elders, and were worn on important ceremonial occasions during significant gatherings or when representing one's people. They were a powerful symbol of prestige wealth, as the collection and preparation of so many feathers was a significant undertaking and connection to the natural and spiritual worlds. There's a quirky little tidbit that the feathers themselves were often believed to retain some of the Wairua spirit or life force of the birds from which they came. So a cloak adorned with kaka feathers might be thought to imbue the wearer with some of the parrot's intelligence or alertness, while kiwi feathers might offer a connection to the hidden knowledge of the forest floor. This belief would have added another layer of spiritual significance to these already precious garments. It's like wearing a power-up from your favorite bird-based video game, but infinitely more culturally resonant and beautifully crafted. Historians still argue about the exact origins and timeline for the development of the most elaborate feathering techniques. Was it an ancient practice brought from Polynesia, or did it develop and flourish primarily within Aotearoa, inspired by the unique and abundant bird life of these islands? While feather adornment was known in other parts of Polynesia, the sheer density and artistry of Maori kahu huru huru seemed to represent a particular peak of this craft. The unfortunate decline of many native bird species after European contact and the introduction of new materials also impacted the tradition, making the surviving ancient feather cloaks even more precious as historical and cultural treasures. The creation of a kahu huru huru was a profound act of patient skill and deep reverence for the natural world. Each feather carefully chosen and meticulously attached contributed to a garment that was not just a covering, but a radiant embodiment of chiefly mana ancestral connection and the vibrant feathered splendor of Aotearoa. You've now been dazzled by the feathered splendor of the kahu huru huru, those magnificent Maori cloaks adorned with the iridescent plumage of native birds, each one a shimmering testament to the weaver's artistry and the wearer's prestige. These garments were undoubtedly among the most visually stunning creations of Maori weavers. But there was another, perhaps even rarer and more highly esteemed type of cloak that spoke of immense status, ancestral connection, and a unique relationship with a now extinct animal, the kahukuri, or dogskin cloak. While the thought might be a little unsettling to our modern sensibilities, particularly for dog lovers, it's important to approach this with an understanding of its historical and cultural context, recognizing it as a significant, if now bygone, aspect of the intricate art of Maori cloakmaking. The kuri was the indigenous Maori dog, a Polynesian dog variety that accompanied the first human settlers to Aotearoa on their great voyaging canoes. These dogs were not just pets in the modern sense. They were also a source of food, though this was not their primary role in all regions or for all groups, and their skins and hair were highly valued for creating warm, durable, and incredibly high-status garments, particularly cloaks. This is a mainstream historical fact. The kuri, or Polynesian dog, was the only domesticated mammal. Aside from the rat, which was more of a stowaway brought to New Zealand by the Maori, and its skin and sometimes hair were used to create prestigious cloaks known as kahukuri, which were symbols of chiefly rank and wealth due to the immense labor and number of skins required. These cloaks are now exceptionally rare. Imagine the process of creating a kahukuri. It would have been an even more labor-intensive and resource-intensive undertaking than a feather cloak. First, a sufficient number of kuri skins had to be procured. These dogs were not hugely abundant, and their skins were a valuable commodity. The skins would then need to be carefully prepared, scraped, cleaned, and possibly softened through various traditional processes. Then the weaver would meticulously cut the skins into narrow strips or sections. These strips were then sewn onto a backing of woven muka flax fiber, often in intricate patterns with the dog hair, forming a warm, shaggy, and visually striking outer surface. Sometimes only the hair itself was used, carefully attached to the flax base. The most prized kahu kuri were often made from the skins of white dogs or from skins carefully arranged to create geometric patterns using contrasting colors of dog hair, black, white, and brown. These cloaks were incredibly warm, durable, and due to the sheer number of skins and the immense labor involved, they were symbols of the highest rank and greatest wealth. Only a powerful chief rangatira or someone of very high standing could command the resources to commission or receive such a garment. Wearing a kahu kuri was an unambiguous statement of one's position in society. It was like the ultimate designer fur coat of its time, but with layers of ancestral and spiritual significance far beyond mere fashion. You didn't just pop down to the local dog skin emporium to pick one up. These were heirlooms in the making, often taking years to complete. The kuri itself is now extinct, having disappeared by the mid-19th century due to interbreeding with European dogs and other factors. This makes the surviving kahu kuri in museum collections around the world even more precious and poignant. They are tangible links to a lost species and a vanished aspect of Maori material culture. Looking at one of these ancient cloaks with its carefully arranged strips of dog skin, its soft, often faded hair, one can only imagine the stories. It could tell the ceremonies. It graced the chiefly shoulders it once warmed. There's a quirky and rather practical tidbit about kahu kuri, that apart from their warmth and status, the dog skin was also naturally somewhat water resistant, making these cloaks quite effective in New Zealand's often damp and rainy climate. So, while incredibly prestigious, they also served a very real function in protecting the wearer from the elements. It was high fashion meets high function ancient Maori style. No need for a fancy Gore-Tex jacket when you had your ancestral, spiritually imbued, and remarkably weatherproof dog skin cloak. Is that a new kahu kuri chief very fetching? And I see you've gone for the waterproof yet breathable model. Excellent choice for this drizzle. Historians still argue about the precise regional variations in the construction and use of kahu kuri. Were they more common in certain tribal areas than others? Did specific patterns or arrangements of dogskin strips have particular symbolic meanings or denote specific lineages? And how were the kuri themselves primarily regarded? As working companions, as a food source, or as a valued resource for their skins? The relationship was likely complex and multifaceted, varying across time and place. The archaeological record and the few surviving cloaks offer tantalizing clues, but many details remain shrouded in the past. It's important to approach the concept of the kahu kuri with cultural sensitivity. While the idea of using dog skins for clothing may seem jarring to many of us today, for the pre-European Maori, the kuri was one of the very few domesticated animals available. And utilizing all parts of an animal resource was a common practice in many traditional societies worldwide. These cloaks were not made with cruelty or disrespect, but with immense skill, artistry, and a deep understanding of the materials, intended to honor both the animal and the high-status individual who would wear the finished garment. The kahu kuri therefore stands as another example of the intricate, patient art of Maori weaving a tradition that could transform even the skin of a humble dog into a garment of extraordinary beauty, warmth, and profound cultural and spiritual power, a rare and potent symbol of chiefly mana in ancient Aotearoa. You have now witnessed the incredible artistry involved in creating various types of Maori cloaks, from the fine kaitaka with their intricate taniko borders, to the dazzling feathered kahu huruhuru and the rare high-status kahu kuri made from dogskin. You've seen the patient preparation of the harakeke fibers, the meticulous dyeing with earth's hues, and the magic of the watu finger-weaving technique. But a Maori cloak was always far more than just a beautifully crafted garment, more than just protection from the elements or a display of artistic skill. Woven into every fiber, every feather, every carefully placed strip of skin was a profound spiritual essence, a quality known in Maori culture as mana. The cloak was not merely an object. It was a vessel, a bearer of the soul, a powerful symbol of identity, lineage, and ancestral connection. Mana is a complex and central concept in Maori and other Polynesian cultures. It can be loosely translated as spiritual power, authority, prestige, efficacy, or even a kind of sacred life force. It can reside in people, particularly chiefs Rangatira and priests Tahunga, in objects and in places. This is a mainstream historical and anthropological understanding. In Maori culture, significant woven garments, like kakahu cloaks, were believed to be imbued with mana, the spiritual power and prestige of both their original weaver and subsequent wearers, especially if they were of high rank or possessed great personal achievements. This mana made the cloak a powerful protector and a symbol of its owner's identity and lineage. When a skilled weaver, often a woman of high standing and possessing her own considerable mana, created a cloak, she was not just performing a mechanical task. She was imbuing the garment with her own spirit, her knowledge, her ancestral connections, and the power of the Karakia prayer she recited during its creation. The cloak absorbed the mana of its maker. The very materials themselves, the sacred harakeke flax, the feathers of noble native birds, the skin of the kuri dog, were also seen as possessing their own inherent life force and spiritual qualities, which became part of the cloak's essence. It was like each thread carried a spark of the divine woven together to create something greater than the sum of its parts. You weren't just putting on a piece of clothing. You were enveloping yourself in a spiritual force field, a wearable testament to your connection to the gods, the ancestors, and the land. When a cloak was then worn by a person of high rank, a respected chief, or a powerful warrior, their own personal mana would further enhance and become part of the cloak's spiritual charge. The cloak would absorb their experiences, their achievements, their authority. If a cloak was worn during important ceremonies, significant battles, or momentous political gatherings, the mana of those events would also become woven into its fabric. It became a living history, a repository of deeds and destinies. Imagine a great chief renowned for his wisdom and bravery wearing his ancestral cloak. That cloak wasn't just a symbol of his current status. It was a tangible link to all the powerful ancestors who had worn it before him, their collective mana a palpable presence offering him strength, guidance, and protection. It's like wearing your family's most prized heirloom, if that heirloom also happened to be a direct line to your most awesome and spiritually potent great-great-grandparents. Don't worry about this negotiation. The cloak might seem to whisper, "Great Uncle Rangi faced down 3 warring tribes wearing me, and he didn't even spill his kumara. You'll be fine." This imbued mana made the cloak a powerful form of identification. The specific patterns in the taniko borders, the types of feathers used, or even the particular style of weave could signify a person's lineage, their tribe iwi, their sub-tribe hapu, and their social standing. Wearing a particular cloak was a way of stating without words who you were, where you came from, and what your ancestral connections were. It was a visual language of identity, understood by all. There's a quirky little tidbit that suggests even the act of naming a significant cloak could add to its mana. Just as important weapons or canoes were often given personal names, so too were highly valued kakahu. This name might reflect its history, its appearance, or the deeds of a famous ancestor who once wore it. The name itself would carry power and become part of the cloak's ongoing story and spiritual identity. It's like naming your beat-up old car Pegasus in the hope it might suddenly develop an ability to fly, but in the case of a cloak, the name actually reinforced its already potent spiritual charge. Historians still argue about the precise ways in which mana was believed to be transferred to or maintained within a cloak, and how these beliefs varied regionally or over time. Was it primarily through contact with high-status individuals, through specific rituals of consecration? Or was it an inherent quality of the materials and the act of creation itself? It was likely a combination of all these factors, a holistic understanding of spiritual power residing in both process and person. The mana of a cloak also meant it had to be treated with great respect. It wouldn't be casually discarded or used for mundane purposes. There were protocols for how it should be worn, how it should be stored, and how it should be passed on. To damage or disrespect a cloak with high mana was not just an insult to its owner, but to their ancestors and their entire lineage. The cloak's soul, its spiritual essence, was a living, breathing part of Maori culture, a powerful thread connecting the past, the present, and the future. You are now deeply aware of the profound spiritual power, the mana that was meticulously woven into every Maori Flax Cloak, transforming it from a mere garment into a living repository of identity. Lineage and ancestral connection. These kakahu were far more than just beautiful or functional. They were sacred objects imbued with the essence of their makers, their wearers, and the very land of Aotearoa itself. Given this immense cultural and spiritual value, it's no surprise that these cloaks were not treated as disposable fashion items. Instead, they were cherished as taonga tuku iho, treasured heirlooms passed down through generations. And the act of gifting or receiving a cloak was a highly significant event laden with meaning, respect, and the forging or reaffirming of important social and political bonds. Imagine a significant moment in Maori life in pre-European Aotearoa. Perhaps a marriage alliance being formed between two powerful families, a peace treaty being sealed after a period of conflict, a young person coming of age and taking on new responsibilities, or a respected elder passing on their wisdom and authority. In all these pivotal life events and many more, the ceremonial exchange of a valuable cloak would often play a central role. This is a mainstream historical fact. High-status Maori cloaks kakahu were considered precious heirlooms taonga, and were frequently used as significant ceremonial gifts to seal alliances, honor individuals, mark important life transitions like births, marriages, or deaths, or to settle disputes, thereby playing a crucial role in Maori social, political, and diplomatic life. The giving of such a cloak was a powerful gesture of respect, generosity, and the cementing of relationships. When a cloak was gifted, it wasn't just the physical object that was being transferred, it was also a portion of its accumulated mana, its history, and the prestige of the giver's lineage. To receive such a gift was a great honor, a recognition of one's own status or worthiness. The cloak would then become part of the recipient's family treasures, its story now interwoven with theirs to be cared for, and eventually passed on to future generations. It's like receiving an incredibly valuable family heirloom. Say your great-grandmother's diamond necklace, but if that necklace also carried the spiritual power of all your ancestors and could possibly ward off minor curses if you wore it with sufficient dignity. The stakes were a little higher than just not losing it at a party. The presentation of a cloak as a gift would have been a formal and often highly ritualized occasion. Speeches would be made, genealogies recited, the history and significance of the particular cloak perhaps recounted. The act of draping the cloak over the shoulders of the recipient was a powerful symbolic gesture, an embrace of kinship, respect, or alliance. The quality of the cloak offered by it, its fineness of weave, the richness of its tanako patterns, the abundance and rarity of its feather adornments, or the prestige of its dogskin origins, would all reflect the importance of the occasion and the esteem in which the recipient was held. You wouldn't fob off a visiting paramount chief with your second-best, slightly moth-eaten rain cape if you were trying to negotiate a lasting peace. You'd bring out the good stuff, the cloak that fairly hummed with ancestral mana. These cloaks also played a vital role in funerary rites. A beloved and respected individual, particularly someone of high rank, might be wrapped in their finest kakahu for their lying in state tangi, or a precious cloak might be draped over their burial casket, or laid with them in their grave to accompany them on their journey to the ancestral spirit world of Rarohenga. In this context, the cloak served as a final mark of honor, a symbol of their earthly status, and perhaps as a protective garment for their spiritual passage. There's a quirky little tidbit that sometimes, if a particularly famous or historically significant cloak became damaged or worn over many generations of use, new sections might be carefully woven to repair it, or feathers might be replaced. This wasn't seen as diminishing its value, but rather as adding to its ongoing story, a testament to its enduring importance and the continued care of its guardians. It's like a beloved historical building that undergoes careful restoration. Each new repair becomes part of its living history rather than a detraction. The cloak wasn't static, it lived and evolved with the generations who treasured it. Historians still argue about the precise rules or protocols governing the inheritance of particularly important ancestral cloaks. Did they always pass down a specific male or female line? Could they be gifted outside of direct kinship ties under certain circumstances? And what happened if a cloak associated with one lineage was captured in warfare by another? The answers likely varied according to specific tribal customs and the particular histories of the garments themselves. The provenance of a cloak, its biography, was a crucial part of its identity and its power. The concept of taonga tuku iho, of treasures passed down from the ancestors, is fundamental to Maori culture. These cloaks were among the most precious of such treasures. They were tangible links to the past embodiments of ancestral presence and carriers of cultural knowledge and identity. The patient art of the weaver didn't just create a garment. It created a legacy, a thread that bound generations together, a beautiful, enduring whisper of an ancient and deeply spiritual tradition. Each gifted or inherited cloak was another stitch in the vast intergenerational fabric of Maori society. You are now deeply appreciative of the Maori Flax Cloak, the kakahu, not just as a product of intricate patient artistry, but as a sacred heirloom. A taonga imbued with ancestral mana and gifted with profound respect to mark life's most significant passages. You've seen how it was woven, how it was treasured, how it was passed down. But how exactly were these magnificent garments worn? And on what specific occasions did they grace the shoulders of their esteemed owners, transforming them from mere mortals into figures of heightened prestige and spiritual power? Draped in mana, wearing these cloaks was like wearing history, itself a visible testament to one's lineage achievements and connection to the divine. The way a Maori cloak was worn was not casual, it was itself a statement. These were not shapeless ponchos or utilitarian blankets. Most kakahu were rectangular in form and were designed to be worn draped over the shoulders, often fastened at the neck, or across the chest with ties made of plaited muka flax fiber, or sometimes with a beautifully carved bone or paunamu greenstone toggle or pin. This is a mainstream historical fact. Maori cloaks kakahu were typically worn draped over the shoulders and fastened at the front. Their style and the manner in which they were worn often indicating the status and identity of the wearer, as well as the specific ceremonial context. The drape of the cloak, the way it moved with the wearer, was part of its aesthetic and its power. Imagine a rangatira chief, or a tohunga priest, or a skilled expert making an entrance at an important gathering. Perhaps a huki meeting or a ceremonial feast. They would move with dignity and grace, their finest cloak flowing around them. If it were a kahu huru feather cloak, the myriad feathers, perhaps the iridescent black of the tui or the fiery red of the kaka, would shimmer and rustle with every movement catching the light, creating an aura of living beauty and avian majesty. If it were a fine kaitaka with intricate taniko borders, the geometric patterns would speak of ancestral lineage and esoteric knowledge, their bold black, red, and white designs a striking visual statement. The very act of wearing such a cloak transformed the individual, elevating their presence visually, underscoring their inherent mana. It wasn't just getting dressed, it was an assumption of ancestral power. It's like the difference between putting on your everyday work clothes and donning a full set of ceremonial regalia. One is for function, the other is for making a very serious, very impressive statement about who you are and what you represent. The occasions for wearing these high-status cloaks were numerous and significant. They were essential attire for important ceremonies, perhaps rituals dedicated to the gods, harvest festivals, or rites of passage like births, marriages, and deaths. During formal oratory Waikarero on the Maori communal meeting ground, a speaker of high rank would often wear a prestigious cloak, its mana adding weight and authority to their words. It was said that the cloak itself could speak of the wearer's lineage and status, even before they uttered a single word. My cloak, with its 3 generations of kiwi feathers, and the taniko pattern of the Ngati swift canoe lineage will now address the assembly on the important matter of kumara cultivation quotas. Cloaks were also worn during diplomatic encounters, when leaders from different iwi tribes or hapu sub-tribes met to negotiate alliances, settle disputes, or engage in trade. The quality and beauty of the cloaks exchanged or worn by the participants would be carefully noted silent indicators of wealth power and mutual respect or lack thereof. They were in a sense part of the currency of chiefly interaction. While the most elaborate cloaks were for ceremonial and high-status wear, more practical everyday cloaks made from coarser flax or with simpler weaving techniques would have been worn for warmth and protection from the elements by people of all ranks. But even these would have been made with care and skill, valued for their utility. The focus of our sleepy journey, however, is on those intricate, patient works of art that were more than just clothing. There's a quirky little tidbit about how cloaks might have been used in storytelling or dramatic performances. A skilled orator or performer might use the drape and movement of their cloak to enhance their gestures to create dramatic effect, or even to represent different characters or elements within a story. The cloak could become a dynamic part of the narrative itself, a flowing, rustling extension of the storyteller's art. Imagine a tale of the wind god Tauhira being enacted with a cloak swirling like a storm, or the story of a beautiful bird princess, her feathered cloak shimmering as she moved. Historians still argue about some of the finer details of how specific types of cloaks were worn by different genders or age groups, or if certain cloaks were strictly reserved for particular ritual roles that are no longer fully understood. The interpretation of early European drawings of Maori wearing cloaks and the analysis of wear patterns on surviving museum pieces continue to shed light on these nuances of traditional Maori dress and deportment. So when you picture these magnificent kakahu being worn, see them not just as static museum pieces behind glass, but as living, breathing garments, moving with grace and power, adorning individuals of high standing as they navigated the important moments of their lives and the intricate social fabric of their world. Draped in mana-wearing history, the Maori cloak was a profound expression of identity artistry and a deep, enduring connection to the ancestors in the land of Aotearoa. You have journeyed with us through the entire intricate and patient art of weaving a Maori flax cloak, from the respectful gathering of the sacred harakeke and the meticulous preparation of its muka fibers, through the rhythmic dance of the wada finger weaving and the creation of stunning taniko borders and feathered adornments. You've understood the profound mana imbued in these garments, their role as treasured heirlooms, and the dignity with which they were worn on occasions of great significance. But what of this ancient art form today? In a world of fast fashion and mass-produced textiles, has the quiet, patient tradition of Maori cloak weaving faded into the mists of history, like the call of the extinct huia bird? Thankfully, the answer is a resounding no. While it faced immense challenges, this sacred art is experiencing a vibrant modern dawn, a testament to the resilience of Maori culture and the enduring power of ancestral traditions. The arrival of Europeans in Aotearoa from the late 18th century onwards brought profound and often devastating changes to Maori society. New materials like wool and cotton became available, and European-style clothing was often adopted or imposed. The traditional uses and contexts for many types of kakahu began to decline as Maori social structures and ways of life were disrupted by colonization, land loss, and warfare. The intricate knowledge of specific weaving techniques, dye recipes, and patterns once passed down seamlessly from mother to daughter, from master weaver to apprentice, began to be lost in some communities. This is a mainstream historical fact. The traditional art of Maori cloak weaving, along with many other aspects of Maori material, culture, and language, experienced a significant decline during the 19th and early 20th centuries due to the impacts of colonization, including land alienation, population decline, and the suppression or devaluing of indigenous cultural practices. Many precious skills were in danger of being lost forever. By the mid-20th century, the art of creating the finest types of cloaks, particularly those with intricate taniko or dense featherwork, was held by only a handful of elderly weavers. The threads of this ancient tradition seemed perilously close to breaking. But then, beginning in the latter half of the 20th century and gaining momentum with the broader Maori cultural renaissance, often called Te Maori ano te tutanga, Maori also stand up, a dedicated and passionate movement arose to reclaim, revitalize, and ensure the survival of this precious art form. Visionary Maori women, often working with museum collections to study ancient examples and seeking out the few remaining elder weavers to learn their techniques, began the painstaking process of relearning and teaching the skills of their ancestors. It was like carefully gathering the scattered precious fibers of a near-forgotten cloak and patiently beginning to reweave them stronger and more vibrant than before. Today, the art of Maori cloak weaving is very much alive and thriving, though it remains a highly specialized and deeply respected skill. Weavers across Aotearoa are creating stunning contemporary kakahu, some adhering closely to traditional patterns and techniques, others exploring new materials alongside traditional muka and innovative designs that still resonate with the spirit and values of their ancestors. These cloaks are once again being worn at important cultural events, gifted to honor esteemed individuals and treasured as symbols of Maori identity, resilience, and artistic excellence. They are seen at marae gatherings, at university graduations, at national celebrations, and even on international stages, when Maori leaders and artists represent their people to the world. It's less museum piece and more living, breathing cultural heartbeat. There's a quirky and rather wonderful tidbit that many contemporary Maori weavers still observe traditional tikanga protocols when gathering harakeke, and during the weaving process, often accompanying their work with karakia prayers. There's a deep understanding that they are not just creating an object, but are engaging in a sacred act of connection with their ancestors, with the natural world, and with the spiritual essence of the materials themselves. It's a holistic approach that sees the art form as inseparable from its cultural and spiritual roots. You might even find a weaver who has a specific lucky patch of harakeke. They always return to one that their grandmother or great-grandmother also used, feeling that tangible link across the generations.